There is no sound louder than silence inside the House of Windsor. Behind the high walls of palaces and carefully trimmed gardens, the royal family's private conversations have always been their strongest defense and their deepest weapon. But now, that silence has become something else entirely, an act of war in velvet gloves. King Charles III and his heir, Prince William, are no longer speaking. Not a text, not a phone call, not a whisper carried through aides. The relationship that once promised stability for the monarchy has, according to insiders, collapsed into silence. What caused this? Not one scandal, but a sequence of wounds that cut deeper than any headline could show. The root is personal, but the consequences are political, and the institution they both represent trembles on the edge of another reckoning. It started in Balmoral, Scotland's sacred ground of royal introspection, where the mist hides more secrets than any palace corridor. Every autumn, the king and his eldest son retreat there for private time. A ritual born in tradition and inherited from Queen Elizabeth, who believed the Highland stillness could calm any storm. But this time, the hills echoed something darker. Instead of healing, they became the stage for a confrontation that left both men changed. Charles, weary from illness and burdened by the weight of a crown he waited a lifetime to wear, wanted to talk peace. Peace with Harry. Peace with the press. Peace within the fractured house he now rules. William, sharper, younger, harder, wanted control. He no longer believes in peace, he believes in pruning. The monarchy, he argues, must be lean, focused, and ruthless about reputation. Charles, ever the philosopher king, calls that cruelty. Getting William to Balmoral for that summit was supposed to fix things, one insider murmured. Instead, it showed just how far apart they've grown. It wasn't a family meeting, it was a negotiation between two monarchs. And then came the final blow, words, not swords. William's appearance on Eugene Levy's The Reluctant Traveller was meant to be charming, a glimpse of the man behind the future crown. But within those carefully measured lines, Charles heard an accusation. When William said, "I hope we don't go back to some of the practices in the past that Harry and I had to grow up in," he may have thought he was speaking as a father. His own father heard a judgment. The practices in the past were unmistakable, the cold silences of the Charles and Diana marriage, the media warfare, the lack of emotional safety that shaped two motherless boys. For a monarch who has spent decades trying to rebuild from those ruins, the words struck like a slap. Charles, insiders say, saw them as betrayal, not reflection. From that moment, contact ended. Calls ignored. Meetings cancelled. Courtiers instructed to delay correspondence. Behind the polished palace gates, a family's arteries froze. For the king, who believes in the soft power of patience, this fracture could not have come at a worse time. He is still in treatment, still determined to use his reign to reconcile what his mother could only manage through silence, the feuds, the divorces, the sons at war. For William, the timing doesn't matter. He sees himself already preparing for the throne, one that will demand modernity, efficiency, and no room for scandal. Their philosophies no longer rhyme. Charles believes in mercy. William believes in the message. And that message is clear: no second chances for those who've disgraced the crown. Not for Andrew, still shadowed by Epstein. Not for Fergie, whose resurfaced emails to the disgraced financier left a sour taste even among her defenders. And not, above all, for Harry and Meghan, whose interviews, books, and self-branding projects turned family trauma into entertainment. William's anger toward his brother has hardened into policy. "He's not angry now," said one former courtier. "He's calculating. He doesn't want to reconcile, he wants to erase." Charles, in contrast, still reaches for the phone, still asks if it's possible to heal. He speaks of forgiveness, as if it were the only currency that can save the monarchy. That's where the new tension lives. in the space between a father's compassion and a son's pragmatism. And yet, for all their differences, both men are products of the same haunted palace. Charles was shaped by silence, by the stoicism demanded of a boy who could never cry in public, never hug his mother without the eyes of the world watching. William was shaped by exposure, by growing up on magazine covers, watching his parents' pain become tabloid profit. One learned endurance, the other learned control. But both learned fear. At Balmoral, that fear spilled out. Witnesses describe a walk through the pines that turned from gentle to sharp, the air between them filled with the unspoken, William's frustration that his father clings to outdated loyalties, and Charles's exhaustion with what he calls his son's corporate approach to kingship. What began as a conversation ended as a cold divide. A week later, William's interview aired. A day after that, Charles stopped calling. Now, courtiers whisper of a peace walk, a photo opportunity where father and son would stroll side by side, smiling faintly for cameras, to signal unity. But those same sources admit the truth: there is no peace to photograph. Because this silence isn't a pause, it's punishment. Behind the scenes, aides are divided into quiet factions, those loyal to the old king, and those orbiting the future one. Each side leaks, spins, and tests the waters. The monarchy thrives on illusion, but right now, even that machine is breaking down. Trust is shattered, said one insider. They both think the other is playing the media. The irony is, they are both right. Even Kate Middleton, ever the diplomat, is said to be walking carefully. She wants calm, but her loyalty lies with her husband, whose fury still flickers behind his steady smile. She knows better than anyone that for William, forgiveness is a foreign language, and Charles's fluent use of it only widens the distance. And what of Harry? In California, he watches from afar, offering carefully rehearsed compassion in interviews, saying his focus is on family. Insiders doubt it. William reads those words as performance, not peace. Charles clings to them anyway, because, for a father who's lost too many years, even illusion is comfort. This isn't just another royal quarrel. This is a collision of eras. Charles represents continuity, the man who waited longer than any heir in history, shaped by tradition, bound by the idea that monarchy is less about personality and more about endurance. William represents adaptation, the leader in waiting who knows survival now depends on optics, relevance, and restraint. Charles wants to be the reconciler. William wants to be the reformer. But in their refusal to bend toward each other, they may both become what they fear most: the king who divides, and the heir who isolates. Imagine, for a moment, the scene at Balmoral now, the same oak table where Elizabeth once held family meetings, now a symbol of distance. Two empty chairs. Two men who can command armies of advisors, but cannot manage a phone call. And between them, a dynasty suspended in cold air. History loves symmetry, and this one is bitter. Once, Charles rebelled against his parents' formality. Now, his own son rebels against his restraint. Once, the monarchy's wounds came from scandal. Now, they come from silence. Every palace aide knows the risk. Silence spreads. It becomes rumor. Rumor becomes narrative. And narrative becomes legacy. The British monarchy has weathered affairs, divorces, abdications, and death, but its true enemy has always been division at the top. When the monarch and the heir are estranged, the whole system trembles. Insiders claim there will be a reconciliation eventually. But eventually is a dangerous word when your family's image is your country's symbol. Every day they spend apart feeds the press, fuels speculation, and drains the reverence the crown still commands. And yet, perhaps this silence is part of a larger transformation. Maybe the monarchy itself is learning what Charles and William have not: that survival demands letting go of perfection. That sometimes, even silence tells the truth more clearly than a speech from the balcony. But for now, there is no balcony moment, no united front, no royal laughter. Only two men, who look at the same crown, and see two different futures. One believes in forgiveness, the other believes in evolution. And between those two visions lies the most dangerous sound of all, nothing. Because when the king and his heir stop speaking, the palace stops breathing. And the echo of that silence might be the first real crack in the crown itself.